track at the wall. We are tied. Look at this. He's standing forward. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Dropping a big leg. Over for the cover. It's over. Unbelievable. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. Awesome. He got it. The starter. Mike Tyson in. Austin is the champion. Stone Cold. Stone Cold. Stone Cold. Now the 2-2. Well hit down the left field line. Way back in. Touch a ball, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life. Oh my God, no! Mankind did it! Nick Foley did it! No! Stone Cold did it! Mankind has achieved his dream and the dream of everyone else who's been told you can't do it! No! You can't do it! You can't do it! No matter what, got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
That fucking sax. It's the best.
It is. See, I used to play a little saxophone. Do you know?
Oh
that?
yeah? Must have been a long sax. Was that a big one?
What was it? A big alto sax.
Oh,
Yeah.
big boy sax.
Yeah.
I feel like we need more saxophones. It needs to come back.
Yeah, they're due for a run. It's been
Such
a while.
hallmark of the 80s.
Yeah. I know Gaga had them popping in like the middle of the last decade.
Hmm.
And then Katy Perry jumped on. So yeah, I think they're due to swing back.
Agreed. Well, we're swinging back around as well here. It's Thursday. It's time for WWE WAR, our sabermetric style look through every WWE pay-per-view year in history. Last episode, we wrapped up a very short season, 1992-93. It was a lot of fun. Want to thank you for all the great feedback we received and all of the interest in that season. Of course, it was one that we really liked doing. If you are listening to us on one of your podcatcher apps on the North South Connection Podcast Network, just so you know, if you're new to this, we're also available on video now for many of our shows, including this one. So if you go to YouTube and just search North South Connection, subscribe, you can get all this content visually as well. You can see all of our cool shirts and Marcus's cool hair and everything else we got going on here on WWE WAR. We are starting our 10th season tonight, Marcus. So big deal. 10.
Yeah, 10. It's a good one. It's another sprint for us. Not unlike the last season that we did.
It's only gonna be 2 episodes. That's it.
Only 2 episodes, and I think it's gonna be already a little nostalgic. I think it's a time period held fondly by a lot of people. So I'm looking forward to getting into that.
And it's almost 10 years old this season already, which is crazy. That's enough. But we are going to do the 2014-15 NXT season. So it's our second NXT season. Last we did 18-19. This is really pretty much the beginning of NXT for us. I know, we had this debate. There was technically a takeover, right? Earlier in the year it wasn't necessarily it wasn't entitled takeover. It was the first NXT show when the network launched. I had the big Cesaro Zayn match and a few other matches. I don't think we're going to be covering that on this program. Like, there's a few outliers we're not going to hit, and that's just one of them because it's really just one show. It didn't really fit the seasonal format. And we're doing pretty much just the NXT proper takeover. So tonight we're going to cover the first 2 takeovers in history. That is NXT TakeOver and then NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way. That we'll be touching on as well. So, and the next episode, we're going to wrap up. It's only a 4-show season. So another quick one we're going to knock out. I think we needed a couple of quick ones after that marathon 2015-16 we did. I think it was good to kind of churn through a couple.
Yeah, it's a good change up to the long fastball of the The previous season we did the big was that 16,
15,
15, 16. Yeah, 15, 16. So and I know we got some other doozies down the road. So gonna enjoy the short break.
Yeah, and the short takeovers compared to some of those ones did in 18-19 as well. These are quick.
Yeah, very digestible.
So we do everything on a plus minus system here. If you think of everything as a flat replacement level entity or a thing or a match or whatever, it's here, right? Everything we believe is over that line gets a plus. Anything below that line gets a minus. We net all that out and give a total score, and that's how we stack rank all of these pay-per-view events. As part of that, we also grade every match that occurs. We consider 2.5 to be a replacement level match. It's as average as it gets. Anything above, anything below, again, we total that up. Marcus' grade and my grade, and we net everything out to a total score. So we're going to do that through a bunch of categories. Marcus, do you want to run through what those are?
Absolutely. I'll take us through. First, we start off with the build up to the event, followed by the commentary, the atmosphere of the event, notable moments and importance, our match grades like you talked about, card structure, rewatchability, all-time matches, and then we total all of that up. And an all-time match for us in the positive would be anything that we both agree is 4.25 and above. And for it to be a minus, it is anything that we both agree is 0.75 and below.
Absolutely. For rewatchability, just to call it too, that's the category where it's like things that aren't maybe a notable moment or part of a match per se, but it might be like a cool move, a funny promo, a hot debut, like something that's just like, oh, that exact moment is rewatchable. It may not be notable, it may not be a title change or something crazy, but it was just like a fun moment that if you were throwing the show on and just kind of hitting the high points, those are things we'd want to rewatch or avoid if they're minuses.
Yeah.
So. All right, let's dive in then. Let's get started with our first episode or first show of this episode, and that is NXT TakeOver, May 29th, 2014 from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. It was an interesting show, right? This early NXT for sure. We have Tom Phillips, William Regal, and Byron Saxton in the booth, and we start right away with a guy who's kind of a mainstay in early NXT. They'll eventually move him up to the main roster not too long after this. He just did not click there like he did here. And I think it was almost an early warning sign, this guy here, that some of the acts that were super over in NXT were not going to translate when it came time to the bigger arenas and the different crowds and the overall commitment in booking and presentation. So a guy like Adam Rose in our opener, he's got the little party, dancing around the outside and around ringside, and in that tiny little shoebox in Full Sail, it looks cool. There's like 20 people dancing around, and it feels like a big deal. Suddenly, you get to an arena with 12,000 people, and everything's kind of smaller in size, and it just doesn't resonate as well. But beyond that, again, like a lot of the acts that they sunk the time into in NXT, they didn't put that same amount of time in when it came to the main roster, whether it was proven to be a good idea or not. They didn't always give a lot of these guys a chance to succeed. So Adam Rose is taking on Camacho in our opener. Camacho, he had already been on the main roster, right? Like,
right, yeah.
Back here, right? He had been with what?
Unico, yeah.
And his feud with Sin Cara. He rode on the motorcycle, the back of the motorcycle.
the bike, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Was it just a bike?
It was a bicycle. Yeah, it was just a bicycle. Funny. Yeah.
So he's back here kind of rebooting. I don't think he's around long because I think it's the only time we see him this season.
Yeah.
So he must have kind of been booted out of here pretty quick. Guess we can look real fast. But yeah, NXT, yeah, he leaves in June, his contract. Okay. He got released. He goes to TNA for a while, then New Japan since. So, all right. So Adam Rose wins this with a party foul. I didn't find this to be anything too special. I've never been into Adam Rose. Like, I get it. It was cool. It was a ripoff of, was this to Get Him to the Greek? Was that the idea?
I didn't know that. Okay.
Was it Get Him to the Greek, or was it the guy from Forgetting Sarah Marshall? I mean, it's something that's supposed to be like that kind of guy, like Austin Powers type guy, like a party guy. And he had like this weird party with all these people in costumes hanging around. And that was supposed to be the concept. It was like based on that kind of party guy that, gets kind of carted around because he's kind of aloof or whatever. So I think that was meant to be it. Like, you're going to hang out with him and just have a good time. But it just, in ring, I didn't think he was ever that good. I mean, he was Leo Kruger before this. I thought he was most infamous for being, remember that NXT documentary series they did when the network first started. I don't know if you ever checked
Yeah.
those out.
Mhm.
And he was like a spotlight on one of them, right? Like him, how he was struggling as Leo Kruger was maybe going to be done, and then kind of found this Adam Rose character. And at that point, it hadn't really fallen apart yet for him. But he did have a minute here where he was pretty over. I went 2 1/4. Again, I didn't find much to this.
Yeah, I have an aversion to Russell Brand. Just
well, that's it. This is what it's
not
supposed
for
to
me,
be.
but that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And maybe why this character never exactly clicked for me. It's just like I think it's good work if you can find it. Like if you're okay, like finding that gimmick that's kind of the rotational mascot style character that they have that they can throw in like the D-list celebrities in. And you can interact and have that spot, which is a spot he had for maybe two years or so on the main roster before doing some other stuff. Like, it's a good run. A lot of people would kill for that kind of run.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just didn't click on the main roster. But for here in NXT, it's a fine opening act. I went 2 1/4 as well. Nothing to write home about, and a fine way to like non-offensively start the show.
Yeah, and the crowd was into him. I mean, so whatever.
Yeah.
And again, like this, atmosphere is gonna be interesting for this season. We're not in the full sale crowds yet, where it's like super over the top. We kind of get there toward the end of the season, but these are still the crowds that we're gonna have for a while, where they're very engaged in the data in the week-to-week product because everything's taped there, right? So they kind of have their favorites, and that carries over to these shows. Rose would have a fine little run on the main roster. I mean, he ends up with the social outcasts and all that, right? He's there for a while. He turns heel, then he goes into that group for a bit, and then he finally just gets released. But I think he's still bopping around the indies somewhere, right? I feel like he always shows up on social media now and then.
I think so, yeah. Every once in a while he pops up somewhere.
All right, what do we got next?
Next up, we have our first title match of the evening for the WWE NXT Tag Team Championship. It is the Ascension, Connor and Victor, retaining over El Local and Kalisto. I believe Fallen Man was hit. I didn't have much to write home about this match either. I went with a 2.5. The one thing is that the Ascension, you can tell the more experienced guys from the guys with lesser experience, and like they understand who they are, they understand who the characters are, and how to present themselves, kind of as like these. It's a little bit of a stretch to say like Legion of Doom, Demolition, the style of like the big powerhouse tag teams, but that's how they present themselves kind of in the smaller setting of NXT. And it works. Again, it works in the smaller setting. And I think once you bring that act up to the main roster where there's a lot of people with a lot of size, it doesn't hit quite the same. But again, for NXT, for where we were at, again, this is a very over and established act. And I think for, coming off of Adam Rose, who's like a clear no doubter established act in NXT, and going into this, like if you're just seeing NXT for the first time, you're getting a grip on like who the main players are. And I thought this match did well to kind of cement the Ascension as a top act in NXT. So 2.5 for me.
Ascension was definitely one of those teams you heard about because there were a lot of people not watching NXT at this point, right? I mean, had been on for a while. I think it was almost a couple of years at this point that NXT had been on. Transition from FCW to NXT. It was on the web and then onto the network. So there were people that had been watching, and Ascension is one of the teams you heard a lot about. And they were presented that way for sure. They were presented like a modern day Road Warriors or Powers of Pain type gimmick. And then you see them, and they're booked dominantly through. We're not going to see that as much here because this is pretty much the tail end of their run. But for most of their run, they were presented very dominantly. Again, another team that once they get to the main roster just looked like goofs. Weren't nearly as over or presented as strongly, and they just look small once they got up there. El Local is actually Ricardo Rodriguez, who had, of course, been Alberto Del Rio's manager, announcer for a while, and was kind of working this gimmick, I guess, down in NXT. Just supposed to be a generic masked guy. Kalisto had been on the main roster already as well. It wasn't too long before this, so we saw him. Actually, no, I guess, had he been up already? Maybe not.
I don't think so.
Because it's after this we just talked about 2 seasons ago with the Salida del Sol with the Lucha Dragons.
So he's still getting introduced. He's still getting warmed up.
Yeah, so he's new. All right, I went 2.5 as well. Yeah, it was whatever. I mean, Ascension retain. It was fine. We'll see. It actually leads to something. It's actually a story where Kalisto goes to find a new partner, but we'll get to that. All right, up next we have Sami Zayn taking on and losing to Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze, another dude early on that you heard a lot about. There's a lot of excitement about his character with the selfie stick. That was still pretty new at that point in pop culture. Had a really good gimmick cooking and it was pretty good in the ring. Of course, Zayn had been around for probably a year or so after hopping over from being El Generico.
Yeah, sounds about right. Right around a year.
So he'd been in there. He obviously had built up quite the following. I'm looking quick. Yeah, he was in ROH till 2012, and he showed up in NXT. Actually, January 13, he showed up. So yeah, he's been a little over a year. And he was already kind of established as one of the top guys throughout that run, especially when it came to the feud with Cesaro. That kind of made him. We talked about it earlier in the year. He had that best 2 out of 3. That was great. And here, I actually found this surprising that he lost to Breeze. He put Breeze over.
Mm-hmm.
Because it felt like Zayn was being pushed a little bit more, but it's a big win for Breeze. I wouldn't put this in the upper echelon of Zayn's matches. I know there are people like Aaron who absolutely love this run by Zayn. I think he had Zayn super high on his original GWE list that we did in 2017, just based on the work he had done in NXT to that point. And just great match. It's a great match. I think this is a really, really, really good match. Borderline greats, but Breeze dodges the haluva kick and hits the beauty shot to win. So I went 3 3/4. Again, I think it's really good. I think Breeze has talent, and he's just one of those guys that you kind of wonder, like another one, like why didn't it really click for him at the next level? And he has a good run. Again, I mean, he's fine. He's around for a while, and he teams with Fandango and all that. It has some good stuff, but he seemed like someone that would eventually maybe break out again. I don't know if it's the size or just a couple years too early. I'm surprised Triple H hasn't brought him back, honestly, or used him, unless he's just done and doesn't want to come back. But he seems like a guy that Triple H would kind of run back and give him a shot, since he never really got like a real shot at the big leagues.
Yeah, I think he's making things work with like the video game, up, down, down, and he's got his training school. So if he's making money, not taking bumps, good for the dude.
Right.
He might be is he an agent? He might be an agent. I'm not positive.
Maybe.
I might be. I might be lying there, but maybe I dreamed that. But I want to say he's backstage a lot of the shows. And yeah, he's a guy during this time period, like fast forward a year, I would think like engrave this dude's name on the Intercontinental title and like don't take it off for a year.
Oh yeah.
Like this is the perfect gimmick to be like, this is the Intercontinental champion, doesn't have to go any higher, but like he could easily be like, I wouldn't say your replacement, but he could be like your next Dolph Ziggler. Like he could be the next like great match guy, and have a character to go with it. And again, once he got up to the main roster, it just didn't click, and eventually found his footing as a tag team guy. But great talent, one of the holdovers from FCW. And this match was really, really good. I went 3 3/4 as well, 3.75 for us. And yeah, Zayn's an all-time great. I'm not like the highest on his run here, but it's undeniable greatness.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna see some great stuff too to come in the season still from him. So Breeze, I didn't realize Breezango was still around in early 21. Like that's crazy to me. They were the Dusty Rhodes Classic. Him and Fandango both got released in June.
They went
of
back.
21.
That's right.
But then he is a performance center trainer now. He came back in October of 22.
Okay.
Official co-host of the Up Up Down Down channel, and is currently working as a trader. So you were right.
Okay. Good for him.
All right. So yep, 3 3/4 for both of us on that one.
Yeah. Let's go to our semi-main event, or I guess our co-main event. It is for the NXT Women's Championship, as we have Charlotte defeating Natalya, and this is the finals of the vacant NXT Women's Championship tournament. Paige had given up the title after getting called up to the Raw SmackDown rosters. And what's cool about this is they do Brett is with Natalya, and you got the Nature Boy Ric Flair with Charlotte. I thought it was a really good use of using that star power.
Yep.
And the two of them, even in their let's say older age, you could still see like the charisma kind of ooze off both of these guys. Even Brett in his subdued state, you could just see his facial expressions, like when Charlotte puts on the sharpshooter wrong. There's that famous like look of disapproval from disappointed Brett. This is really good. I went 3.75 with this match as well.
Yep, me too. Charlotte wins with the natural selection. Not a surprise that she would win the vacant title and become really the first. I mean, Paige and Emma, we talked about that a little bit previously, but they were kind of the forebearers of the women's revolution.
Yeah.
They're kind of gone now. And this is really the rebirth of the modern NXT women's division that would eventually morph into what we have today on both rosters. So Charlotte winning here, not a surprise. Natty, I think, was a good choice to come in and lend some credibility. Had been on the main roster for a while. She had a name value. Brett and Flair make it feel special. I think there was no other outcome, but I think they had really good chemistry that carries over. Like, they have a bunch of good matches together, these two, and that showed here. So I went 3 3/4 as well. And I think it's interesting too. We already have the NXT TakeOver card structure is pretty much like defined already. Like, start with kind of the lower end stuff, build, women's main event, men's main event, and out. And it's 5 matches. Like, it almost is crazy how established that already is here, because that's similar to what we were doing in 18-19. Like, even though the names are bigger and the matches were longer and harder, better storylines or whatever, it's still like match, women's main. Like, if you go look at any card from that we did in 18, Shayna was the semi-main, and then Cole or whoever was in the main event, and that was it. And it was like the same setup. So it's pretty interesting that they had this that well defined already out of the gate, and it pretty much stays through most of them. All right, main event time, as we have Adrian Neville defending the NXT Championship against Tyson Kidd. Kidd had been around for a while on the main roster, kind of came down here to help. I think it was a smart move. I think early on they tried to present NXT a little bit like old ECW, where guys that just had not much going on, they would send them down there for a run, let them rebuild themselves, keep busy, help other young guys learn the craft. So I think Kidd was sent down there to kind of train as well as work, and here to put over Neville, who had been on a hot streak, was our champion, had defeated Bo Dallas to win that title early on, and had it for quite a bit. He wins with the red arrow, which always looks amazing. And I thought this match was very solid. I'm not going to say it got past that level. I would argue it's probably a little disappointing in many ways too, when you kind of look at the two guys involved, what you would expect from it. I went 3.5.
Yeah, it's just a very straightforward, like, good professional wrestling match.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, on this night, that was good for a 3.25. I really felt the last, like, 4 minutes or so, and this match goes almost 21 minutes, goes 20:55, and it was right around the 16-minute mark. I was like, all right, like, let's get going. But there's going to be more to come from these two. This match did a good job of setting up where we're going to go this season. And it's cool to see Tyson Kidd, like, even though he's already had a good run, a fine run on the main roster, he's down here to, like you said, train, help develop other people. But also we're going to see him kind of flush out his character a little bit more so that he does get that second chance on the main roster. And that's going to lead to some greatness with Cesaro. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he kind of just tweaks and brings out, like, little pieces of his personality to put into his character.
All right. So that's it for the matches. So that totals up a score of, so I talked about it briefly, but so if I give it a 3.5, you get a 3.25. We take the average, which is 3.375, round it up to a 3.5. That's a +1 off of replacement level, 2.5. So we did that for every match and score that up, leads to a 3.25. So a +3.25 for total match score, which is pretty good. I'd say, like, our average stuff usually is maybe in that 2 to 3 range. This is probably a little bit above average. It's not our top tier. When you start hitting like 5, 6, 7, that's when we start to really, like, pile up the great matches. But this is pretty good. I mean, anything positive is good in these. So, all right, let's get to our plus minus categories. We're going to start with build. We gave it a point for the really good basic opening video to show all the characters that have come from NXT. A point for Camacho trying to bust up Rose's party. A point for the good build to Zayn's climb to the top. That was chronicled throughout this. A point for Natty and Charlotte, both trying to prove themselves with their family names, good synergy. And a point for the very clean sports build up to the main event.
And because we have such a tight card, our only minus was no real build for the tag team title match. Again, Ascension's kind of already cleaned out most of the division. So not too much of a challenge for the champions going in.
All right, so I guess a total score of 4 on the build. For commentary, we gave 2 points for Regal. Just added a lot of insight and credibility throughout the night. A point for the announcers doing a nice job explaining the stories to new viewers, which there were probably a lot of tuning into this for the first time. And then a point for good story pushing that Breeze is proving he's a legit, a tough guy, not just a joke with a selfie stick. I thought they did a nice job getting that across, that this dude was trying to prove that he could go in the ring, that he was a tough worker, and ended up with the win.
Yeah. For our minuses, we've got Saxon dancing to Adam Rose's music. It's kind of like that forced hokey WWE style fun.
Yeah.
Tom Phillips has a line where he calls Victor the scalpel of the Ascension. It's just weird.
Makes no sense.
No. A lot of talk about getting noticed and called up by the WWE, and making it to, I don't think they say main roster, but
basically time, and leagues,
right, getting called up to Raw or SmackDown, and just kind of points out like this is lesser than, and it's a tough line to toe. But
we know it's true. I mean, there's no hiding it, but by calling it out,
it doesn't do anybody any favors.
They get away from it eventually, and they make it seem like a big deal. Like this, and it comes more once people really start to love the takeovers, and it becomes like a destination show that folks stop acting that way. But to this point right now, it's like, this feels minor league, and they're not helping it by talking about getting noticed, by Triple H or whoever.
Right, it might as well be a AAA game.
Yeah, and then they present it that way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's a +1. Atmosphere. We gave a point for Adam Rose and the party entrance, which still kind of hit in the setting like we talked about. A point for the crowd being into the Lucha chants during Kalisto and El Local's match. A point for Sami Zayn's entrance. A point for Rusev. We didn't talk about that. But Rusev comes out. He had already been up on the main roster at the Royal Rumble. I don't think he was full-time yet. I don't believe on the main roster. But he is, well, maybe it's right around here, I guess. I know he debuted in the 14 Rumble. I know that. But I thought he came back down for a bit and then went back up. But here he destroys poor Mojo Rawley, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But his entrance is always awesome with the music. A point for Ric Flair and Charlotte Flair's entrance, and then a point for the pop for Brett was really cool.
Absolutely, Mr. Hitman. For our minuses, we got the overall presentation feel of the show. It feels very low level indie, which is just it's weird for being WWE. The crowd being bummed out about Sammy losing. Takes away what could have been a big memorable moment, like a big win for Breeze. And then the crowd not fully into Tyson Kidd as a challenger hurts the main event vibe. She's just kind of like guy from WWE who's a really good wrestler. Again, like that character piece is missing. So that held the atmosphere back a little bit for the main event.
Still a positive score though. Gets a 3. We thought it could be a good takeover. All right, notable moments and importance. We gave a point because Tyler Breeze with the win becomes the #1 contender for the NXT title. A point for Ric Flair and Bret Hart appearing on the show as managers. A point for Chris Christopherson in the crowd, his first celebrity that we see at a takeover. Of course, people in the crowd becomes a big takeover thing going forward, and this is kind of the first. His son was starting to train, so they call that out. So there's kind of the first big celeb there. A point for Charlotte winning the vacant NXT Women's title. And you called it the meme of Brett being not impressed with the sharpshooter from Charlotte. So a point for that.
For our minuses, we've got El Local feeling pretty low rent and a little goofy. We got Zayn losing, hurting the story a little bit. And Breeze could have had a tough loss and been okay. And that was kind of like the role that he always found himself in NXT. So it's kind of a bit of a surprise to see him pick up a big win.
And the whole story is Zayn, like, just climb to the title. And then he loses here. So it felt like a step back on the first show.
Yeah.
All right. So it's another +3 overall for moments. We give a +3.25 for match quality. Card structure, we give a point to starting hot with Adam Rose and the party. A point for the #1 contender match to clearly define a path to the top and put in an important match on the show and a good stipulation. And then a point for that structure we talked about. Women's world title, men's world title to cap the show. Comes in NXT stable.
Yeah. For our undercard, for our minuses, we have the undercard feels more like showcases, like we talked about with like here is Adam Rose and here's the Ascension. The stakes aren't the biggest, and there's not really any blow off matches. They're just again showcase matches. So that's a weird fit for a big show. And then the random Mojo and Rusev segment was really something that could have been just put on TV. Kind of felt like it was made for TV. Interrupted the pay-per-view style flow of the show.
Yeah, and the crowd wasn't super new at first, and Mojo.
Yeah, it was
Kinda
pulling teeth that whole
looks like a
segment. It felt like
bitch,
they were
yeah.
just swimming upstream.
All right, so it's a +1 on structure. Rewatchability, we gave a point for Zayn's sit down to talk about his NXT climb, which was really well done. A point to rewatch Rusev just completely cuck and murder Mojo, destroys him. And a point for Charlotte and Natty doing the post-match celebration, torch passing there, and then a point for the Red Arrow, which to me will always get a rewatchability point because it's just an amazing move.
Incredible, yeah. For our minuses, we got Mojo discussing foreign diplomacy. The Page hype promo feels very forced. The crowd was not into it at all. And
It almost like they had moved on. Like I think they tried
yeah,
to make it like she was a returning hero, but like
yeah.
no one was
You're
really
like,
into it. It was kind of like, all
no,
right, yeah,
like,
we're
oh,
ready for
you
something
you
else.
left, yeah, you left. You're gone. Be gone.
Well, and it's funny 'cause I remember over on the Placement Nation Wrestling Network, PTB NXT with our good friends Jennifer Smith, Tim Cable, and Jake Williams. They're going through the history of NXT. They're doing all the TV and the takeovers. They're into like spring of 15 right now on their journey. But when they covered this, I remember when they talked about it, it was like very weird that Paige gave the title up, and then she was on TV a bunch anyway, and at the takeover, and they were like, well, they made it like she couldn't work both, but then she kept freaking showing up. Why not just have her put
Yeah,
over Charlotte and lose the title here? You know, and I get maybe not wanting to have her lose after she went over big on the main roster, but I remember them getting in depth on that one, how weird it was to approach it that way. All right, so it's a total rewatchability of 2. All-time matches, we didn't have either. No pluses, no minuses. Everything was below our benchmarks. And that gives us a total war score, Marcus, of 17.25. So a pretty strong showing, honestly,
yeah.
for the first NXT TakeOver. If we were to slot that in, it is a top 27 show for us. So it's 27th
Not bad.
place, which is crazy because for a while, something in the 17s felt very felt high, honestly. Like that felt like a good score, but we've been on a bit of a hot streak with some of our stuff and it's been peppering in. But if you look at it's tied with Brooklyn 4. I mean, that's surprising to me. It's tied with Brooklyn from 2018.
Sometimes it's proof like more isn't always better. Those NXT shows we talked about from the 18-19 season, while they are pretty trim, like they're 5 or 6 matches, those matches are pretty heavy. A lot of just over the top in ring working, whereas here the show's a little bit more digestible and there's different styles, and they really save everything for the last like 3 matches as opposed to just like, all right, here's 5-star matches,
Right. And
so
it's not
yeah,
tied. I misspoke. It's a half point below. It's 7. Brooklyn 4 is 17.
still it's really close.
17.25. It's closer than you would probably think.
Yeah.
This finishes right above Battleground 15, which had a 16 and a half, and then below Survivor Series 11 at 18.75. So, I mean, it's a top. So far, we have 75. That's our 75th pay-per-view, actually. So there you go. It's top third, pretty much at 27. So not too bad.
Not at all. Good showing.
Yeah. All right. What do you say we move on along then to our next show here tonight, continuing on through NXT 2014-15. All right. And that is NXT TakeOver Fatal 4-Way. Took place on September 11th. There you go, 2014. From Full Sail yet again in Winter Park. Same estimated crowd, just over 400. We have 6 matches to talk about this time that we're going to go ahead and dive into. And the opener of this card features the Ascension yet again defending their NXT Tag Team titles against Kalisto. And this time he has a new partner, and that is Sin Cara, the birth of the Lucha Dragon. Sin Cara had been on the main roster for a couple of years on and off. We went through multiple versions of Sin Cara. Sin Cara original left. I think Unico ended up going under the mask after the feud, taking over Sin Cara, and finds his way here to NXT to team with Kalisto. They end up winning the tag team titles with the Salida del Sol. I was surprised actually to see Ascension already lose the belts. I know they don't really move up to the main roster till early 15. So I guess they kind of putt around a little bit longer on NXT even without the titles before they make the main roster. We talked a little bit about the Lucha Dragons. They will also go up, and they had that awesome match at TLC that we talked about, and would stick around for a bit there as well. So it was, again, a fine opener. I think it was good to have the title change here to kick things off. The Lucha Dragons are exciting, so start hot with them. I went 2 3/4.
Yeah, 2.5 for me. I know they're definitely not a finished product. They're very much just getting started. But Lucha Dragons, they kind of wrestled the match as like two singles guys. And it felt less like a team. Even their finish, it's always going to be Kalisto hitting his finish as opposed to like a tag team finisher that they're looking to hit. Which I get, the point of the tag team is to really highlight Kalisto and get him up to the main roster. But the Ascension taking an L here felt like they had to kind of disappear once they lose and kind of get Rocket strapped up to the main roster. And that's not going to be the case. We're going to see them, like you said, kind of putt around for the remainder of the season. So we'll see how that plays out. 2.5 for me. And that takes us to our first real disagreement, I think, of this season, as we have CJ Parker, who's been a mainstay of NXT. Again, he's a holdover from the FCW era, and he's going to be taking on who I believe is the debuting Baron Corbin. And I'm of the opinion, real quick, I'm somewhat of a Baron Corbin apologist. I think he's been miscast a little bit, and I think we're going to see that this season. Sign me up for the Lone Wolf. This is my style of wrestling.
What's it with you and animals? I don't get it.
I don't know. It's just my thing. He's going to completely mow through CJ Parker. They're going to have about like 29 seconds, I think, is the official match time. And hit that end of days, man. It's the debut of one of the coolest moves of all time. I think it kind of takes the torch from like jackhammer, diamond cutter, jackhammer, F5, and I think it's end of days as far as like super dope finishes. So I went possibly with an unruly 2 3/4. I thought this was a highly effective squash match to establish Corbin. I rest my case.
Sure. 1 star for me, which is high for a 29-second match. I mean, I gave it its due. It put over Corbin. It caught me off guard. I knew CJ Parker wasn't long for the world by this point, as I saw him at an indie show, I think not too long after this, in a little like hall in Cranston, Rhode Island. It was Kevin Kelly was there, so I went to go, and he was working. It was right before I think he went to go become Juice Robinson, and built himself a nice little career as Juice. So good for him. But yeah, this whatever. It's Corbin's debut squash. Fine. 1 star. Let's move along. Next up, we have our first takeover experience for Enzo Amore. He's out with Big Cass, and he's taking on Sylvester Lefort. He is, of course, tag team partners of Marcus Louis. This is a haircut match. Hair versus hair, whatever. They build was fine. They had Enzo and Cass were kind of goofs in their build with the magic cream that was to take the hair off of whatever right away. And they were starting to build the partnership with Carmelo a little bit here too. I think that was still fairly new at this point. But they're over like already. Like the crowd is already into both these guys, and Enzo's already got the shtick down. He wins the match, but Lefort escapes before his hair can be shorn. We'll revisit this throughout the night, and eventually it's Marcus Louis who gets the haircut and then ends up taking it instead of Lefort. I don't think either of these guys. I don't know if we see him again anyway on here. Yeah, I think they're on TV, but I don't know if we see him at TakeOver again. So it's pretty much it.
Yeah, a fine thread for the night. 2.25 for me.
Yeah, same.
I did really enjoy kind of like the organic coming together of Carmella and her being like the hairstylist with Enzo and Cass and like the Freebird cream. I thought that was a good way to kind of get that act together. But we'll talk about that a little bit more and reward that or tally that up when we get into our categories. Our next match of the evening is Mojo Rawley taking on Big Bull Dempsey. I'm usually all about big men slapping meats, but This might have been liverwurst. This is not for me. Not interested at all. I went with a WAR score of 1 for this match, and that's all I have to say about it.
I went 1 1/4. It's another squash. Bull beats him clean, and surprising because I remember all the freaking talk about Mojo. Like I thought he was a bigger deal, and he's just been made to look like a joke in the first 2 takeovers. Like he gets crushed by Rusev in a segment, and then just destroyed in a minute by Bull here. So again, another squash. You know, we've stepped back. I feel like from the first takeover here with the card a little bit. We started hot, and now we've had squash, a 5-minute comedy match basically, and then another squash, which I think we could have just went with either Corbin or Dempsey on this card. I don't think we needed both squashes like to establish new characters. I think one would have been fine. But yeah, it just goes a minute and whatever.
Yeah, you never need Mojo Rawley. So that one could easily go on.
All right, brings us to our women's championship match. Charlotte defending against Bayley. She does defeat her in 10.5 minutes. Again, I was surprised to see Bayley. I think my timeline internally, because I didn't watch NXT regularly for a long time. I used to pop the takeovers, a couple of days after they dropped or whatever, but I wasn't really dialed in. So I think I know of a lot of stuff that was happening pre-takeover that I didn't realize was pre-takeover. Like I didn't realize Bayley's early days were before this time period, because I was actually surprised to see her already kind of fully formed into the HUD character, getting the title match here. But she's still presented as an underdog quite a bit, in that she'd have to really put together like a perfect match to really out wrestle Charlotte, and that's how it's presented. And Charlotte does beat her clean to retain. So I liked this. There was a little notch below her match with Natty last month, so I went 3.5 on this.
Yeah, exact same 3.5. It was a pleasant surprise to see Bayley's character so fully developed and almost be a finished product. And in ring too, she is she's miles ahead, I think, of a lot of wrestlers, men, women. She's a standout so far this season in ring, again, like kind of knowing who she is and what the character is. So yeah, we'll see more of them this season. But it is our namesake match of the evening. It is a fatal 4-way, and it is for the NXT title, and it is our main event, as we have Adrian Neville defending against Sam Zayn, Tyler Breeze, and Tyson Kidd. Neville is going to successfully retain. Going to be a little bit of WWE style drama, a little bit of pathos going on here. As Neville's going to pull the ref out of the ring as Zayn looks to finally get the win. And they're going to play that out, and eventually Neville's going to sneak out the win here. Really excellent match. They go 24 minutes, and I went with a 4. About as good as you could really ask this match to be. The one thing I didn't care for was there was like a period of rest holds, and I felt like
you shouldn't need that with these 4 guys.
Tyson Kidd was in control, and I remember Breeze and I think maybe Zayn might have been on the outside. It just felt like, all right, kind of like, what are we doing? It felt like a lot of laying around, and it went like 5 minutes. It was a lengthy amount of time to kind of be doing nothing in the middle of a match.
I think with these 4 guys, I believe you shouldn't have any slow spots at all. I mean, these are 4 guys that can go and really should be able to pace through a 25-minute match when you look at the different combos they can work through. That said, I still liked it a lot. Went 4 1/4. I feel like this is a bit of a hidden gem that you don't hear too much about, but I liked all 4 guys in the match. Kidd takes a loss again. That pretty much nukes him as a contender of any type. I'm sure, I don't know if he was pretty much on his way out at this point to head back up to the main roster. But we know he's up there in 15 because that's, we covered him in that season, so he must be up there soon. So he's pretty much dead in the water, I think, as a contender, having gotten beaten twice straight by Neville. But we get another red arrow. Zayn doesn't take the loss. It looked like he maybe had the win, so that should set him up to continue to climb. But again, he comes up short. So our first 2 takeovers, Zayn on the short end of the stick. All right, so our total match grade score is just a 1 on this one, actually. So definitely hurt by those squashes, significantly lower than our last card. But let's see if the other categories make up for it. So the build, we give a point for the tag team tournament to set up the Lucha Dragons as #1 contenders. A point for the build to the haircut match with Enzo having his beard shaved and, like you said, prepping the cream. A point for Mojo and Bull getting build with the attack by Bull on Mojo on TV. A point for the awesome build for the Bailey character to earn this title match. And a point for a really good main event with all the top players involved in each other's business.
Yeah, Orly Minus is a bit of a lazy, non-existent build for CJ Parker's mystery opponent, and that's just what they advertise it as. No effort really put into it after that, and that gives us a WAR score of 4 for build.
Strong build. Commentary, we didn't mention the announce team, but it's Phillips again, right? But he's with Renee, and who else was on this one? Was it Albert? Or is he not here yet?
I don't think he's there yet. I think it's Byron.
Is it Byron, Phillips, and Renee? It might have been.
I believe so. I believe that's the team.
Oh, they do a good job telling the Charlotte Bailey story, so kudos there. And they seemed enthusiastic when they weren't delivering those forced lines. They did a nice job, but there was a lot of forced stuff, as you're going to get into.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was looking for confirmation on that commentary team. For our minuses for the team, Renee's in full soundbite mode.
Oh, yeah,
You could just tell like she's got somebody in her ear and she's like really thinking about what she's saying. She's got a ton of natural charisma, and now she talks for a living. So she didn't need that. I felt like she was really hamstrung there. A lot of again, that style just leads to a lot of like awkward forced jokes and interaction and kind of just like talking for the sake of talking. So we went -2 there to kind of sum up the whole evening. Talking about how things will make BuzzFeed. Immediately felt everything everything felt dated. Yeah, it felt like a Facebook ad pop up. Again, everything feels forced.
Well, I think they just made a deal with BuzzFeed because they talk about it at one point. I think there was like a partnership to do WWE content on BuzzFeed. They mentioned it at one point during the show. But still, it feels like over the top, like to hear it. They talk about it.
Yeah. Speaking of talking too much, way too much Kid and Natty talk, you would have thought that they were Savage and Liz or something.
I know.
Of NXT. They're kind of the talk of the town NXT, trying to make the booking revolve around the two of them.
But they make Kid feel unimportant because it's kind of more about Natty and how Kid's like just shows up on Total Divas and Kid kind of hangs like they weren't presenting.
He's the cat sitter. Yeah,
they weren't presenting him as like a top guy. So commentary hurt the show for sure. -3. A lot of it was driven by Renee, who was just. I like her a lot as an interviewer. I think she's great with her podcast and on AEW. But like, and even when she just commentated later on Raw, like I think she's fine.
I think she's great there. Yeah.
Yeah, but here, just no bueno. Really.
Yeah, not the environment.
All right, atmosphere. We give a point for the big pop for Lucha Dragons title win, a pop for the Enzo and Cass entrance and promo, a pop for Bailey's entrance, a pop for Charlotte's entrance, a point I should say, a point for the crowd driving Charlotte Bailey through the finish. They were all really engaged. A point for Sami Zayn's great entrance, and then a point for the crowd during the main event. They were so great during that whole match, all the Olay chants and everything else. So I thought this crowd was it might have been a lot of the same fans, I don't know, but they were way more, I thought, engaged in this one than they were at the first takeover.
Yeah, this is kind of like the first showing of like that NXT crowd that would get that reputation. It's kind of like being a star of the show as well. But for our minuses, we have the presentation and look of Full Sail. Full Sail. It's the same as TV. Like they do nothing really to spruce the place up. So it looks just like a regular episode of NXT TV. And then we've got the Ascension being presented as a dominant team, but they don't show that in any way. They go 50-50 basically with the Lucha Dragons. And then we get silence for CJ Parker. Again, it's not a surprise he's going to be on his way out.
Right.
He's dead in the water. Yeah.
All right, so that's a +5 for atmosphere. So a good score here. The crowd really carries this one. Notable moments and importance. We give a point for the Lucha Dragons ending the Ascension's long title reign and winning the belts. A point for Corbin's NXT debut at the end of days. A point for the very first TakeOver gimmick match in this show. A point for the debut. We didn't talk about this, but he comes out for a quick promo. That is the debut of Kenta, who, of course, now will go by Hideo Itami. So a point for that. And then a point for the first ever Bailey Charlotte takeover / pay-per-view match, which should become a big thing.
Absolutely. our minuses, we have no payoff for the haircut stip for LaFour. The Ascension go from dominant tag team to Stooges all within an hour. Quite the fall.
Yeah,
Fall of
because
man
they
them.
come back out in a Tommy and runs them off or whatever. So they're made to look kind of goofy there.
Yeah, getting 2v1 by a Tommy is not the look. And then we got Raleigh becoming the takeover jobber. First he gets beat up by Rusev and now getting beat up by Dempsey.
Yeah. All right, so that's a +2 for moments. We had the +1 on match grades. Card structure, we gave a point for starting off with the Lucha Dragons. Again, a hot tag match. A point for the main event video spotlights all through the show. They kept doing like little spotlights on the four competitors. A point for the structure. Top title matches to close the show, and a point for the longest match being the best match. Not always the case, but it was built and built and built. Our main event got 25 minutes and delivered. So good on them to hit that.
Yeah, but our minus was the multiple squash matches, which easily could have been done on TV. It makes the card feel not so special until you get to like those last 2 or 3 matches.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's a +3 on structure. We gave a couple of things here for rewatchability. A point for Big Cass's nasty boot to Marcus Louis. A point for the Enzo Cass Carmella salon skit with the different cream or whatever. And a point for Charlotte whipping Bailey into the bottom buckle. And a point for the Red Arrow, as always hits there. So that's that. No negatives. We had no all-time matches because you were just a little short on the Fatal 4-Way. You checked in at a 4, so that
the chin lock took me out of it.
Takes us from that. So that gives us a total score of a 16, Marcus. So still pretty good. I mean, I feel like we talked up the first takeover a little bit more than this one, but it ended up being not that far behind, just about a point behind. The 16 puts it tied with King of the Ring 99. Based on our tiebreaker method, it actually finishes ahead, right? Because we go by the best match, and that would be the main event of the show, I believe, is better than anything at King of the Ring, grade-wise. Or what do we have the main event at King of the Ring?
King of the Ring 99?
It couldn't have been probably higher than that, right?
No, that would have been Austin and McMahon. Would we go 3 1/4?
Oh, I'm looking quick. Yeah, 3.5, 3 1/4. Yeah, nothing touches this. Okay. All right, so this finishes ahead of that, and that puts it in 32nd place all time, just below Backlash 99 and Hell in a Cell 15. So
okay, good company.
And right above Armageddon 99. So I think it fits there. Those are all shows that kind of were solid, but not nothing that it's gonna like be super maybe memorable or all time classic that you gotta go back and relive, or like a Backlash where it had some really highs but some lows. This was kind of a compressed version of that. So. All right, so that'll do it. And believe it or not, Marcus, in 2 weeks, we're going to be back to wrap this season up, which is crazy. We'll be closing out the 13-14. I'm sorry, the 14-15 NXT. No, 13-14? 14-15.
All 14. All 14-15.
14-15. We'll be closing that out. So looking forward to doing that. And before you know, we'll be already starting a new season. Crazy enough, a month from today. Sure, check out everything we have to offer here at the North-South Connection, both audio and visually. We're all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Just subscribe here too. It's cool. You should do it. North-South Connection has .com has everything you need though. So be sure to check us all out and live your life above replacement level. Talk to you in 2 weeks' time to wrap up another season.